And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call, as tonight the Indiana Hoosiers absolutely blitz the Illinois Fighting Illini 103-69 on Yogi Ferrell night in Bloomington. This was the night coming in that we all expected Yogi Ferrell to break the all-time record for assists in Indiana history, and he did not disappoint. Getting the 2 assists that he needed within the first about 8 minutes of the game. And actually there was a little bit of a lull if we think back there. Right after Yogi set the record, Illinois got the game back to 22-21. But from that point forward, it was all Indiana. And the Hoosiers win 103-69. I am your host, Jared Morris. I will be here tonight with Ryan Phillips and Will DeWitt. Our other usual co-host, Andy Bottoms, will not be joining us tonight, but that's because he was in Bloomington at this game, enjoying a very strong performance from Robert Johnson and a wonderful performance overall from the Hoosiers that we are going to break down for you tonight on what should be a fun and jubilant episode of the Assembly Call. Because for the second straight game at home, a team has come into Assembly Hall and been beaten senseless by the Hoosiers. And it's always fun when that happens. So let's start out this show, as we always do, with the banner moment. And obviously the obvious choice for the banner moment is Yogi Ferrell, right? Breaking the record as he did. But we'll have plenty of time to talk about that and to talk about what a special player Yogi is, what a special season he is having. But to me, the banner moment actually came after he set the record. Because when Yogi set the record, it was 19-11. The Hoosiers are rolling. But it almost felt like, the team kind of relaxed after that, if you remember back. And it was almost like they had won the game. And Illinois then went on a 10-0 run to get it to 22-21. And that's what the score was at the under 8-minute timeout. But from that point forward, Indiana went on a 21-3 run, took a 42-25 lead going into the half, and then Illinois was never able to get it much closer than that in the second half, and the Hoosiers cruised. But what I liked about that moment at 22-21, and look, part of the reason why Illinois went on the run is because Yogi went out of the game, and putting him back in the game really stabilized things for Indiana. And while that might scare you a little bit for next year when this team has to play without Yogi, right now they have Yogi, one of the best players in America, no matter what the Wooden Award watch list says. And when Indiana can do what it did there at the end of that first half against a team that it should beat, like Illinois, that's what good teams do. That's what great teams do. And we don't know yet if this Indiana team is a great team, although they're certainly looking better and better as they go on in this winning streak. But what they did tonight was impressive because we've seen Indiana teams in the past, even this Indiana team earlier in the season, not be able to put its foot on the throat of an opponent. And in fact, Indiana wasn't really able to do that against Minnesota its last time out. But we're starting to see this team do that at home because they certainly did it to Ohio State. They did it tonight to Illinois. And it was great to see because that's what you need to do. When you are the best team, assert your dominance. And that's what Indiana did today. It was great to see, and the Hoosiers cruise to the big victory. All right, let's go around the horn and get your guys' opening thoughts on tonight's victory. Ryan, we will start with you. I know you have nothing to rant about, but what's your opening thought on tonight's victory?
I know it's kind of falls behind Yogi in the in the rankings of the night and how things went, but I thought that Max Bielfeldt played a great game. It'll go unnoticed because most of the damage he did was in the second half when the game was already way out of control. But the guy played 17 minutes, had 16 points, 8 rebounds, 3 steals, 2 blocks, only 1 turnover, was 6 of 9 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3. I mean, I thought overall Max showed that he can do so much for this team. And Thomas Bryant had an okay game, but he didn't have a standout game. And this wasn't really with, the team setting the school record with 19 three-pointers. This wasn't the game that was going to be a grinded-out inside game. And Max is more of an inside-out player, and I thought he played really well. And at times when the offense stagnated, he took over. And, there was one possession where things didn't go great, so we just grabbed the ball in the middle and shot a little turnaround fadeaway and hit it. And at one point he went on a 10-0 run by himself. So it was really a nice game for Max. I think that we've been seeing that more often, and he's definitely the kind of guy you're realizing who doesn't have to score a bunch every game to stay in a rhythm. He can have a game where it's not that he's necessarily off, but they don't necessarily need him to put in a lot of points, and then come out the next game and blow the doors off somebody. And then, if he's not needed the next game, he'll play, but he doesn't need to score points to have an impact. So we're seeing this consistency from him where he doesn't get down if he doesn't get his points. And, frankly, that's been missing at IU over the last couple of years, is guys who stay engaged when they're not getting their offense. And I really appreciate Max as a player because he's clearly there for the team. He wants to, he's there to win a championship. He wants to, win a Big Ten title, go to the NCAAs and have a chance to win it. That's what he cares about. And so he's going to exert himself when he knows it's the best time to do so. And he's going to provide leadership, and he's going to be there as a guy that can keep seeing it game after game. And, I always laugh, but he's better than we thought he was going to be, and that's why I call him better than advertised Bielefeld, because he is way better than we thought he would be. He's way better than we were told. And I don't know if that's just a guy working on his game or he just didn't fit in well at Michigan. I'm not sure, but he is much better than everybody told us he would be.
He's better even than you've been advertising him, which is hard to do. All right, Will, your stat of the night.
Yeah, well, we kind of hinted to this a little bit earlier in the email that was sent out this morning, but Illinois came into game ranked 325th in the country against in a three-point field goal percentage allowed, as they allowed opponents to shoot 38.8% from deep. And Indiana came into the game, ranked 5th in the country with three-point percentage at a 43.6%, field goal completion for three-pointers. Well, I think Indiana knew that coming in because they took 21 threes in that first half out of their 33 shots. And for the game, we kind of alluded to that again earlier. They made 19 of their 36 attempts, good for 52.8%, which broke the school record of 18 last year that was set against Minnesota. So, again, it's kind of cool to see one of those things that we're keeping an eye out. And then, heck, we broke a record today, so that's going to be my stat of the game.
Yeah, and there's some debate about how much a team actually influences their own three-point field goal percentage defense. Ken Pomeroy's done a few studies on it that it seems kind of random at times. But I tell you what, the stats sure look like it tonight. This Illinois team came in not defending the three-point line well. Indiana got plenty of open looks, and they knocked him down. There's plenty of storylines to get to. We will cover all of those here as we go through on this episode of the Assembly Call. Do want to remind you real quick to make sure that you get on our email list. You can go to assemblycall.com/subscribe, or you can text INDIANA, yes, Indiana, to 44144. You'll get a message back, and then just input your email address, and you will be on our email list, which means that you will get our post-game emails. Those only go out to subscribers. We don't post them anywhere else. It is a great way to connect with the show and get extra analysis in addition to what you hear here on the show. So assemblycall.com/subscribe or text Indiana to 44144. So you're listening to the Assembly Call. This is Jared Morris. I'm here with Ryan Phillips and Will DeWitt. We are celebrating Indiana's 103-69 win tonight. And, a game like this is so much fun, and it's a challenge when hosting a show like this because there are so many different directions we can go in because so many guys played well. So let me go totally off the board. I have to give a quick shout-out to Dustin Tipton, one of our longtime listeners, who tweeted me it was actually before the last game, and said that he and his wife were actually scheduling an inducement to make sure that they could still watch the game. But the baby actually came early. Baby Zoe came a couple of days ago. He tweeted me the picture earlier today, and so I wanted to make sure that we gave Dustin a shout-out, congratulated he and his wife, his fiancée, on the birth of their beautiful new baby girl. Congratulations to you, and welcome, baby Zoe. And with that said, Ryan, let's dive into a couple of individual performances tonight. And I think we need to start with Yogi, but we've also got to start with Troy. Or get to Troy. But let's start with Yogi because, look, it's a night he needed 2 assists coming in. He ends up getting 9 assists. He has 16 points. And Andy sent out a couple of tweets in the first half talking about how Yogi was just playing incredible defense on Kendrick Nunn and really harassing Kendrick Nunn in the first half. He only had 5 points. He finished with 10, 3 of 11 shooting. And it was just more of what we've seen from Yogi, where he's locked in on both ends. And there was a play in the second half that really, really stood out to me because, the Hoosiers are up by 25. The game is pretty much decided. But there was a rebound that was way outside of Yogi's area. He was literally about halfway on the other side of the court. and he sprinted to get this rebound instead of letting the ball go out of bounds. And because he did that, it created a transition opportunity that ended up resulting in a Colin Hartman three. And if Yogi wasn't paying attention, if he was loafing, the ball just goes out of bounds. You have to reset everything, and you don't get that shot. And that's the kind of attention to detail, hustle, extra effort that we're seeing from Yogi this year, and his teammates are following suit. He's doing it on the offensive end. He's doing it on the defensive end. He's hustling for loose balls. And I thought tonight he did a great job of leading. You know, he didn't need to score a ton of points tonight because points were coming from so many other guys. You know, he only took 10 shots. That was third on the team, but did a great job of setting up his teammates with 9 assists. And look, on a night when he breaks the all-time school record for assists, it's a great night for Yogi, and he didn't just go through the motions, especially after breaking that record. He had 7 more assists, and I thought it was just another great game in what is turning into a great senior season from Yogi.
Yeah, he was just locked in tonight. You could tell right from the get-go. I don't know if that record is as important to him as it is to fans. And I think it is because it's such a special record. You look at the guys he passed to get there, and I wrote a piece today or this evening after he broke it about it. I mean, the list of guys he passed to get there is incredible. Quinn Buckner, Tom Coverdale, Damon Bailey's on that list. I mean, it's a list of guys that you just associate with Indiana basketball. And passing Michael Lewis to do it was impressive as well. And so I think that it's one of those things where I think everybody probably wanted to get it out of the way. And the fact that he did it on a no-look pass into the post for a perfect layup was great. It wasn't something where he just, like, on the break kind of pitched it ahead and the guy hit a three. It was actually, like, a really nice pass. And, it was a little theatrical, and it was a great finish by Bielfeldt. And, I think, and I also appreciate the fans knew, too. I mean, they all started cheering as soon as it happened. They all knew. Everybody was locked in. Everybody was rooting for him to do it. And then, yeah, he didn't shut it down. He went off tonight. I mean, look, 9 assists, 16 points. He was 5 of 7 from 3. I mean, this wasn't a let me get this over with and then I'll chill. And he was guarding Kendrick Nunn, who's a fantastic basketball player. So again, I think that and Dan Dockich was talking about this during the. I think he hit the nail on the head during the game. Is Yogi is a guy who as a senior has finally sort of gotten it and bought in and is really about everybody and about this team and realizes that, look, you can put up all the numbers you want, but you're not going to go down in Indiana history unless you win a title or contribute something enormous. You're not one of the guys at Indiana. And I don't know if that's 100% true, but at the same time, that's the attitude you want guys to have. It's about winning a championship. It's about winning the Big Ten. It's about, winning big games and big moments. It's not about racking up numbers. It's about the team and the team's accomplishments. And that is Indiana basketball. I don't think anybody cares, how many points you score. They care about wins and losses in the end. And so I think that Yogi is a guy who maybe is finally starting to understand that, because I'm sorry, you watch this team tonight, you watch them, for stretches against Minnesota, you watch them against Ohio State. They're having fun playing basketball together, and we haven't seen that in a while. I mean, the Maryland game last year was a short, brief glimpse of them having a lot of fun, the one they won, but it wasn't consistent, and now you're just seeing guys who are going out there and playing hard and having fun doing it, and it's not about individual accolades, it's not about individual statistics. They're all playing, working the ball around, playing for each other, and it's a different feeling than it was 6 weeks ago. I mean, I realize they haven't played a great schedule, but 11 straight wins, and over that time period, this team looks different.
Oh, they do, absolutely. And one guy who seems to be starting to come around a little bit is Troy Williams. And real quick before we get to him, one other stat I wanted to mention about Yogi, maybe the best stat of the night, is that Yogi only played 31 minutes. And Yogi's a guy coming into this game that was playing 84% of the minutes for the season, but over the past 5 games, without James Blackman Jr., he's playing 90% of the minutes. And Tom Crean talked about in his pregame comments how they really wanted to try to get Yogi more rest, but without Blackman Jr. and with one less ball handler, it's been really hard to do. And tonight it was nice to see him only need to play those 31 minutes. And that was in large part because so many of his teammates came to play tonight and put on a performance that dominated this Illinois team. And Troy Williams probably turned in his best performance of the season. And we'd be talking about him a lot more if there weren't so many other great performances. But, Troy had 21 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds. He didn't turn it over. He had a steal. And I thought in the second half, especially early, and Dan Dockich highlighted this at one point, Troy was just moving without the basketball so smartly. And we're seeing him now, number one, he's not initiating the offense as much, with the ball in his hands up top. And I think that's helping to reduce some of the turnovers. But he's still got the ball in his hands, and he's still being aggressive. And, while you may say he got bailed out on this or bailed out on that play that could have been a turnover, we're seeing him put himself in those bad positions less, and the turnovers are going down, and he's doing a much better job, like they showed on the broadcast, of playing behind the zone, moving without the ball, of seeing when there's an opportunity to make a basket cut, making it, and finishing it. And tonight, I thought, is what you want to see from Troy. He was 8 of 11. He was efficient from the field. He even made a couple of threes. He was terrific, and if he can bottle this performance, and if you have Yogi and Troy leading like they are tonight, and then the other guys can play complementary roles, that is going to be a big recipe for success for this Indiana team against the better teams on its schedule. And I thought they got off to a great start getting that done tonight. What did you think of Troy's performance in this game?
Yeah, I think that it was very much a less is more performance from Troy, and I think that maybe he's starting to get it, but we've said that before, So I'm not gonna put a bunch of eggs in that basket. I'm just gonna kind of enjoy this one and see what happens. But the fact that he had 5 assists, that Troy Williams had 5 assists and no turnovers in a game in which they were playing very fast and scored 103 points. If you told me he was going to do that before the game, what the result was going to be, I told you were insane. Because when a game gets going like that, that is where Troy is, at his worst at times, is at his at the highest highs and the lowest lows with him happen in that kind of game. And so I thought he really reined it in. I thought he was smart with the basketball, didn't try and force things like he normally does. He had one just absolutely beautiful drive where he went up for a reverse layup and it rolled out, and it would have been one of those vintage Troy finishes. And you could just tell, you could just see his shoulders slump when he missed it because he was setting the drive up for about 12 feet, and then he did it. And, but other than that, that was really the only false note I saw all night. I thought he played really well. He had one where he dribbled into a crowd, but it went off an Illinois guy out of bounds, so it wasn't a turnover. But again, those instances were less and less tonight, and hopefully, again, it continues being that way. We don't need him to force things to be effective. When he's most effective is when he's running that baseline, because nobody can stay with him. He's too athletic, he's too quick, and he has in his he jumps too high for anybody to be with him. And there were a couple of great passes from Yogi tonight to him on that baseline where he finished, and a couple alley-oops, and he just looked locked in, just like Yogi did. And he was arguably, other than Yogi, he was the best player on the floor tonight, and he showed it. And it's the kind of thing you just want him to bottle that up and bottle that in on-court IQ up and use it, moving forward.
Yeah, and it should be said, Illinois was not playing good defense tonight, and apparently John Gross was yelling at his team on the sidelines that they were playing with no pride.
What would make you say that, Jared? I have no idea what would make you say Illinois didn't play good defense tonight.
I have a line in my notes that says Illinois' D is so bad it's throwing off our rhythm. Like, I almost felt like at times that they were so bad on defense we weren't quite sure what to do. Like, there were so many options.
There were guys just standing wide open, and they get the ball, and it was almost like they were looking like, really? Okay. That's how you hit 19 threes. Very few of those were bad looks, and some of them was just like, they could have. It was like guys were hanging out on a desert island. They was just hanging like, all right, sure. And Zysov was just firing away every time he had half a look. He was firing because he's like, I'm not going to get looks like this the rest of the season, guys.
Yeah. Now, but I will say, Indiana has been prone, even in games where the other team isn't playing great defense, to having those facepalm, type turnovers where you're like, what were you thinking? But, Will, you've got some numbers here that Indiana really was able to keep the turnovers down. It wasn't just Troy, it was the whole team.
Right, it was the whole team, and turnovers has been like a topic of discussion throughout the whole season, as we've been averaging turnovers on about 21.2% of our possessions. So, for today, we finished with only a 15.9% turnover ratio. Not too bad. And then on the other side of the ball, we forced the Fighting Illini into turnovers on 21.7% of their possessions, which is pretty darn super considering the fact that they came in ranked second in the country, only turning the ball over 13.7% of the time. Looking at KenPom here, we are currently ranked 55th on defense. It hasn't updated yet for this game, but who knows? We might be able to crack the top 50, guys.
You talking about in overall defensive efficiency?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You look at Illinois, they scored a point per possession tonight, and a lot of that is because of some cheap baskets there at the end. But I look at that and I'm disappointed. And, last year, if you held a team to just 1 point per possession, or even earlier in this season, you were excited. But this team is playing with a different identity. And, you look at that and you think it could be better, and it could have been better. But, some of the stats from this game, just unbelievable. We talked about the assists, but Indiana with 27 assists on 37 made field goals, which is outstanding. Again, only the 11 turnovers, which was under 16%, which is really good, especially for this Indiana team. One other advantage that we thought Indiana would have coming into the game was on the offensive glass, and that proved true as Indiana had 12 offensive rebounds, which was 40%, and Indiana has been just a shade under 40% this season. Illinois actually had 5 offensive rebounds in the first half, which was almost 30%, but they finished the game at 21.7% or 21.2%, which is less than their season average, which was already 339th out of 351. Indiana only allowed them to get 2 offensive rebounds in the second half. And what that shows me is that Indiana, even though they were up by 17 at halftime, and even though the game got out of hand in the second half, this Indiana team didn't lose focus. They kept doing the little things because they weren't turning the ball over. They took care of the glass, and just really, just played such a good game from start to finish. And, you can say everything that you want about Illinois, not coming in, not playing well, all that stuff. But it takes 2 to get a blowout like this, and Indiana certainly did their part. The Hoosiers with an effective field goal percentage of 71.5%, scoring 1.49 points per possession. Really everywhere that you look, except for the fact that Indiana only shot 13 free throws. Just a dominant statistical performance. But Indiana didn't need to shoot free throws because Illinois is packing their defense in. The Hoosiers just kept shooting, taking advantage of the wide open looks, and they were able to take advantage. So, again, just a terrific performance. Before we take a quick break, Ryan, we do, of course, have to mention the performance of Robert Johnson. The president of his fan club, Andy Bottoms, was in attendance tonight, and Robert responded with 13 points, 6 assists, 7 rebounds, only had the 2 turnovers. He was only 3 of 9 from downtown, but it felt better because he stepped into every shot confidently. And that's what I really like seeing, because we've seen him be really hesitant. Today we saw him dribbling between his legs. Like there was a little bit of a different swagger about him. And I don't know if it's that he's healthier, if he's just feeling more confident at Assembly Hall because we saw him play great against Ohio State and then struggle against Minnesota the last time out. So maybe he's getting comfortable at home. But either way, this was the type of performance from Robert Johnson that Indiana is going to need against the better teams on its schedule. We know that Andy is going to be excited about Robert's performance, but you'll have to give some analysis by proxy for Andy. What did you think of Robert Johnson tonight?
Well, it starts at the defensive end for Robert. And even when he's not shooting well, as he hasn't through a lot of Big Ten play, he gives you something. He's not a waste out there if he's missing shots. He's another one of those guys that. And this should be every basketball player, but frankly, just in this day and age, it isn't. But he can impact the game when he's not scoring, and those are the guys you love because everyone's gonna have an off day or an off week shooting or scoring, but he just gives you so much more than just pure offensive numbers. But the 6 assists, the 7 rebounds, only 2 turnovers. This guy's gonna get a triple double at some point. We all realize that, right? It's going to happen, and I think he's going to be the guy to do it at some point. He'll be the next guy to do it. But he's a guy who is very steady, doesn't seem to get up or down, doesn't seem to really be impacted when he's playing terribly. Clearly he's thinking about his 3-point shot, and he has been over the last couple of weeks, but you saw a couple in a row go down tonight, which is a good sign moving forward. I think late he took a few that he might not have normally taken, but he was on the floor with some guys who won't normally be playing with him either. So I think he was kind of the first option on the floor at that point, and guys are looking at him like, all right, you take it, and so he had a couple shots in there that he probably wouldn't have taken. He had an odd drive at one point that just didn't work out, but all in all, when he's fitting in with those frontline guys, he's a perfect complement to a guy like Yogi because of what he can do defensively. Because, if Yogi's getting hounded by a really good defender, Johnson can be the guy who distributes or who can work through the offense. Obviously, his ball handling still needs to improve before he's a pure point guard, But he's getting there, and that's, when people talk about who's going to take over at point next year, I'm kind of confident in a combo guy like Robert Johnson taking that role. I really like what he brings to the table, and he's just a steady guy who will always give you something on the defensive end.
Hey, and OG, it wouldn't be an Indiana game without a breakaway OG dunk. How would you rate OG's reverse dunk on that breakaway?
It was kind of slow in happening. I'd give it the idea and the effort, 10, no question. But he kind of went up slowly and unsurely and was a little off balance, so I give it like a 7.58. And I mean, we're comparing to like Victor Oladipo here and Troy Williams, so I mean, 7.5 isn't bad. But it's just not one of those super. I mean, Victor pulled off a 360 against Illinois in the Big Ten tournament. So you can't match that yet. He's working on it. He'll get there. He has the kind of athleticism where we're going to see them do that again, and it's going to be really nice.
Dunk analysis from guys who would need a ladder to touch the net. That's what you get on the assembly call. All right, Will, you just put a bonkers stat in our chat, and so we're going to get to that after we take this quick break, as we always do at this time in the show. About a couple of weeks ago, I bought these postcards right here. You can see they have the assembly call logo on them, and I've been using them to send thank yous to all the folks who have given us support, who have donated to the assembly call, which we appreciate so much, and I've been having so much fun writing these thank you notes. And one note that I often put in there is, we obviously love our Hoosiers, we love doing the show, but it makes it so much more rewarding, knowing that we are talking directly to passionate IU fans like we are, and people who really appreciate what we're doing and who love the show. And ever since we started letting you know that we are listener supported and asking you to donate if you want to, so many have come in, and we're so appreciative. We thank you all so much. And so for anyone who is interested in becoming a patron of the Assembly Call and supporting us as we expand our coverage and try and do more things like the chat, different content series, really try and give more opportunities to our student interns, we greatly appreciate any help that you can send our way. And there are a couple ways to do that. You can go to assemblycall.com/subscribe, and there are several different donation options there. You can also go to assemblycall.com/gear, and this Assembly Call coaster that I have and that I sent out as gifts this year, you can actually get one of those, and a portion of those proceeds go directly to us. So it's assemblycall.com/support, assemblycall.com/gear. Thank you to everyone who has donated already, and thank you to you if you are considering doing the same, or even if you're just here listening, because you can support the show very much just by watching, just by sharing, and we appreciate whatever you choose to do. All right, well, you are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Indiana dominates tonight in Bloomington, 103-69. They set the school record with 19 made three-pointers. I was hoping it was going to be Tim Priller who made the final three-pointer. Remember, folks, he was recruited to Indiana because he's a tall guy who can make three-pointers. It wasn't him. It ended up being Harrison Niego on the pass from Jackson Tharp, which was awesome. Jackson Tharp's first action in there, so that was great to see. And, Will, you have a bonker stat about Indiana's three-point shooting tonight. You want to lay that on us?
Yeah, sure. Just looking at the box score, I was like, geez, who did not make a three-pointer tonight? But it looks like 9 different Hoosiers made a three-pointer tonight. And the stat about this would be every player that played at least 10 minutes tonight made at least 1 3. Everybody else below did not, but everyone who played 10 did, and that's another super-duper stat.
And here's another ridiculous stat. Everybody who only took 1 three-pointer finished 100% from the field, or from three-point range. OG, Thomas Bryant, Colin Hartman, and Harrison Niego only took 1 3, and they each made their 1 opportunity. So how awesome is that? Very awesome. Ryan,
talk about stats that mean nothing. Yeah.
Hey, you know what?
It's NFL playoff time. That's what we do, folks.
When you win 103-69, I mean, it's just a smorgasbord of stats. So some of them may mean nothing, but they're fun. Okay, so Ryan, let's talk about a stat that does mean something, and that is that Indiana has won 11 straight games. And since December 2nd, when Duke obliterated Indiana 94-74, and they came back, and a lot of us wondered what's going on with this team. They don't look like they're having fun. They look like they've almost quit on the season. Like, these were real thoughts that were being had after that game. So disappointing was that loss. And now here are the Hoosiers with 11 straight wins. They're back in the top 25. They're 6-0, and you can say whatever you want about the schedule, but we are seeing a different team, a team that is locked in on defense, a team that has a great enthusiasm for playing together, a team that is showing it can win in different ways. The offense was clicking tonight, but 2 home games ago when they couldn't make anything against Wisconsin, they still found a way to tough it out. And, so we're really seeing a team come together that looks like it's prepared for that tough second half of the Big Ten schedule. And I think a lot of credit for that has to go to Tom Crean. And I know I saw you having a conversation on Twitter where sometimes it feels like if you say something positive about Tom Crean or that you think he's doing a good job, that it's like an endorsement of every single thing he's ever done at Indiana. And people tend to react one way or the other. And certainly there have been fair criticisms of the work that Tom Crean has done during his time at Indiana, but right now it's pretty hard to find anything to criticize, especially since Big Ten play has started, because he's dealing with the loss of James Blackman Jr., but he's been pushing all the right buttons. And, while the schedule hasn't been great, part of competing for a Big Ten title is not losing games you're supposed to win, and Indiana is winning all the games it's supposed to win. What are your thoughts right now on the job Tom Crean's doing?
Well, I think that people have to understand that, especially Indiana fans, because it seems like this fan base is extremes. It's either everything's awful or everything's amazing. There are gray areas, and there are sort of, there is a middle road. And saying that a coach is doing a good job does not mean that he is the greatest coach ever in the history of everything. And I think that a lot of people feel that. Like if they, like you said, if they endorse him, they're endorsing everything he's ever done, and they're endorsing his entire tenure. That's saying he needs a lifetime contract, or what? It's not like that. You can compliment a guy and have it be just that, just a compliment that he's doing a good job. And Tom Crean is doing a good job right now. I don't know what has changed necessarily, but they're playing better defense. This team is playing well together. It looks like more of a cohesive unit than a bunch of guys kind of filling a role. It actually looks like they're playing together and they're in it together. The plays run more smoothly. Guys know where they're supposed to be. There is a commitment to defense. I don't think it's just James Blackman going out. I think the emergence of OG Anunoby has helped. I think that Juwan Morgan playing some solid minutes has helped. They have confidence in Max Bielfeldt to come in, and so it's not an emergency if Thomas Bryant's struggling. I just think that a lot of guys are doing better, and I think that coincided with Blackman going down has really encouraged the defense to get better. It's encouraged just a smoother offense. I mean, we're just seeing stuff better. And another thing, one thing that Crean has always been criticized about are his plays out of timeouts. And for about the last 4 weeks, we've seen some great plays coming out of timeouts or stoppages where guys are just wide open. And we've, it's one of those things where that's something he has been harshly criticized. That and I think roster turnover and lineup changes and substitutions have been the things that he's been criticized the most about. And I think that the plays out of timeouts have gotten a lot better. I don't know if he's studying tape of what Michigan State runs or what, but they're running good plays out of timeouts. They're not having trouble getting the ball in. Of course, I'm completely jinxing them. That we're going to see like 9 turnovers on inbounds plays against Northwestern this weekend. I know. So send your complaints to Jared, not me.
I'm sorry if I'm a little bit distracted here. I just went and updated, refreshed the KenPom page for Indiana. All right, Ryan, you're going to think I'm making this up. I swear to you I'm not. So you know how on KenPom he's got like the Player of the Year rating? Max Bielfeldt is currently number 10 in the KenPom Player of the Year standings after tonight's performance.
Where was he? Where was he at the beginning of the year, Jared? Where do you think he was projected at the beginning of the year?
I'm going to go not that high. Not that high. So he's certainly been.
What does that mean about him?
Better than advertised. Yeah, he's been better than advertised.
That's right. Yeah, thank you.
I'm wondering if this is some kind of glitch in the data, but I took a screenshot of it because it's beautiful. So I'm going to tweet that out here in just a second. Will, you've got a good question here that you just put in the chat. Let's ask your question, then let's attack this.
All right. Well, I was looking at some of the quotes coming out of Postgame, and Yogi was quoted saying, "We've got a bullseye on our back, being the #1 team in the Big Ten now." So my question to you guys: can Indiana handle having the bullseye on them? I know that in the past they haven't been able to. So do you think now they have a chance to?
It's a good question. I mean, obviously, I think we're going to get a sense of that. When Indiana plays Northwestern this weekend, Northwestern, one of the better teams that Indiana's played during this run in Big Ten play, and then you play Wisconsin after that on the road. And that Wisconsin team, Indiana beat them, and they've struggled, but they also just beat Michigan State at home. So I think these next two games are going to tell us a lot because these are teams that Indiana is ahead of, obviously, in the Big Ten standings, and they're teams that Indiana is better than. They've already beaten Wisconsin, and I think we all think they're more talented than Northwestern. That game's at home. And these are two games that Indiana should come out and that they should win. But they're games that Indiana teams of the recent past haven't. And I think that's where we can really tell if this season is going to be different because I think we've already seen some signs in these 6 games already this year that things are different. The team is gutting out tough wins. They're winning games on the road that they haven't before. The defense is 56th in the country right now, which none of us really thought they could get to this point in the season. That's better defense than the 2011-2012 Hoosiers played. And so do I think they can? I think they're better equipped to do it than I thought they would be, certainly than they were last year when they were 5-1. But I think we're going to learn a lot about this Indiana team over these next 2 games because the competition ratchets up a little bit. They will go into the toughest road environment that they've faced, and I think we'll find out a lot about this team. And if this team is 8-0 after these next 2 games, then heading into that Minnesota game, which we will be at on the 30th, then I can think you can start getting really excited. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be interesting. I think that a lot of people feel Iowa is still the #1 team in the Big Ten. I think that's the feeling, and so it's actually good for Indiana because I know Yogi's saying they have the bullseye and they're the top team, but I think they're still flying under the radar a little bit, which is good because you're not, when you are that #1 team, you're going to get everyone's best shot. Right now, Iowa seems to be, the team everybody's focused on, and I think you're right. I think that the big test is going to be at Wisconsin. Now, look, the Northwestern game is a noon start. Those are always ugly. So, I mean, let's understand this is going to be. It might be a rough start to that game. How they deal with it, how they deal with Northwestern, how they deal with the garbage start time and things like that. That'll really be telling because a mature team can handle that. And fight through it. And we'll see if they have really matured, and that's been the difference this last month. Again, I think that Wisconsin game, I mean, playing at the Kohl Center is always it's like the barn. It's always a disaster. There's always something that happens. It's always crazy. It's rarely just a good basketball, a straight up good basketball game. There's usually some, crazy stuff that happens, and I'm expecting that again. So I think that's going to be a tough game to win, especially given that Wisconsin just beat Michigan State at home on that floor. So we'll see. But if they get by Northwestern and Wisconsin and they're going into that Minnesota game and are still undefeated, we're looking at something possibly special. We are, because I mean they still won't have played a top team in the Big Ten. One of the teams that's necessarily considered a competitor. But I mean that's still, getting to about 9-0 in the conference. I mean, that's a big deal regardless of who you've played, especially because some of those will be road games. So take care of Northwestern. That's going to be a rough one. Be prepared, IU fans. Strap in. That might be a rocky road. Not because Northwestern is particularly outstanding the start time, because it's just an awkward matchup and things like that. But if they beat that Wisconsin team on the road, that could be, the start of something special.
Yeah, that to me is what will really say that this team is different. I mean, winning the 3 road games already, which has not been a staple of Tom Crean Indiana teams outside of the 2013 team, that's, and again, they haven't been against great teams, but they're road wins, which have been so precious and so few and far between. That already suggests to me that it's a little bit different. And the blowouts of Illinois and Ohio State suggest to me things are a little bit different. Now we get to ratchet it up. And it'll be interesting. Northwestern's playing Maryland toe-to-toe right now, so we'll obviously have to see if they can get that win. Will they be coming in with some momentum? We will see. Will, you've got a couple of other good stats here. Let's get to those.
Yeah, just to put in perspective just how great of a game it was, the 61 points in the second half was a season high. 27 assists for this game was also season high, and the 37 bench points tied a season best. So overall, this is a really good game. And even just looking back at the Austin P game where we won 102-76, well, tonight we beat that margin. We scored more points. So I really think that we can actually start to acknowledge a lot of the growth that this team has done since November.
Yeah, and I should say the Ken Palm stats look a little jacked up right now. He must be just entering the data right now. But I took a screenshot of Max Bielfeldt being in the top 10 in the Player of the Year ratings. Because Ryan, you will always have that to back up your better than advertised statement.
Yeah, it's right here. It's right here in the chest. I love it. But one thing that's been impressive about Indiana, I don't think people are talking about because everybody knows about the offense. So scoring 103 points is impressive in a conference game, but at the same time, this Indiana team's capable of that. What I think is impressive about this run is that they only scored 70 against Minnesota. They beat Wisconsin 59-58. Rutgers, they scored 79, but for a long time that game didn't look like it was going to be high scoring at all. They beat Nebraska on the road scoring 79. I mean, they've won in different ways. This isn't just the offense is clicking and they've won games. It's really been, they've had some slogs. They've had some tough fights, and that Wisconsin game is the one that stands out to me that they won, down the stretch with a tough, hard-nosed win that Yogi took over.
Yeah. So Northwestern right now up 4 on the road at Maryland. We'll see how that ends. Andy isn't here to give his preview, but just to give a quick little Northwestern preview before we get into our picks, before we get into last call. They're not a team that's particularly great on either end. They're 52nd in offense, 114th on defense. That's coming into their game tonight with Maryland. But they are a team that plays slow. Their tempo is 335th in the country, so they're a team that definitely wants to slow it down. The average possession length of their opponents is 18.8 seconds, which is 348th. So they literally make teams play slower than almost as slow as anyone in the country. And we know that Indiana wants to play fast. And that's something where, in the game at Northwestern last year when Indiana lost that game, Northwestern really slowed Indiana down and forced Indiana into some offense that it doesn't like to run. And I'm sure they will try the same thing. Now, they have been a team that's been pretty efficient, with a good effective field goal percentage. They don't turn the ball over that much, so the team that isn't necessarily going to beat themselves. And obviously, Bryant McIntosh has been terrific so far this year. His assist rate is 41%, which is 7th in the country. He's playing a lot of minutes, doing a lot for Northwestern, like what Yogi does for Indiana. So it'll be an interesting contrast of styles when they come into Assembly Hall. But with the way that Indiana has played at Assembly Hall recently, these last 2 games, you have to feel pretty good about that. So we will see how confident we feel as we'll give our picks here in just a second. Real quick before we do that, one final reminder, make sure that you get on our email list. It's assemblycall.com/subscribe or text Indiana to 44144. Get on that list. In addition to our post-game emails, which we only send to subscribers, we send other important updates. We'll give you insight the day of games on what to watch for. If you read our email today, you would have been able to predict what would happen with the three-point shooting, as Will said, because we told you that in today's email. So it just allows us to go into a little bit more depth with you than we can here on the show. So again, assemblycall.com/subscribe or text Indiana to 44144. All right, you are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I am Jared Morris. The Hoosiers won 103-69 tonight, and I was thinking about during this game when I was a student at Indiana back in 2002, a top 10 Illinois team came into Assembly Hall, and the Hoosiers absolutely blitzed them. I think they made 17 threes that day. It was a wonderful day at Assembly Hall. It was one of my best memories as a student going to IU games, and something tells me that there are students who were at tonight's game that are going to look back fondly on this Illinois game the same way that I do. This wasn't a vintage Illinois team that came in, but anytime that you can watch a team of Indiana players make 19 threes and watch a senior like Yogi Ferrell, who will go down as one of the better players in school history, break a record like the assist record. It's a great night of basketball, and Hoosier fans were treated to a great night of basketball tonight, as were we, and we've been breaking that down on tonight's episode of the Assembly Call. So let's look forward. Let's look at this Northwestern game. Let's go around the horn and give our picks. Andy is obviously choosing Northwestern. Ryan, who are you picking to win, Indiana or Northwestern?
I'm taking Indiana. I think it'll be closer and less comfortable than any of us want to admit, but I think they'll wind up pulling it out in the end by about 10 points.
Will, what do you think?
Well, back-to-back games in Assembly Hall where IU's led by more than 30 points. Why not make it back-to-back-to-back? IU in another one, 12th straight.
Wow. All right, a bold pick by Will going for the blowout. I side a little bit more with Ryan. I do think Indiana will win. I think there's some of that Assembly Hall magic is back, and I think the guys are playing with a certain swagger at home. But I do think Northwestern will slow this game down, and I think that will keep Indiana from going on a major run and blowing them out like they have against Ohio State and Illinois. And you look at what Northwestern's doing right now, going in against a good Maryland team, playing them tough on the road. Clearly this is a Northwestern team that's well coached. They've got a good point guard in Brian McIntosh to kind of settle them down. So we'll see. I do think Indiana wins. I certainly think it's closer than these last two games have been, and maybe even a game that Indiana goes down to the final minutes and needs to pull out so it's a little bit closer to the Wisconsin game. But it's a game Indiana should win, a game that I think Indiana will win. All right, gentlemen, let's go to last call. Some final thoughts on tonight's IU victory. Will, we will go to you first.
Well, I kind of hinted to it a little bit earlier, just looking at the schedule. I mean, I think we just have to really acknowledge the growth that this team's had. The losses in Maui are starting to look more like Ryan's fault that he was there. So other than that, when you guys come here next week, which I'm really excited for you guys to be here, Ryan, I know you said you got a press pass, so please don't screw this one up for us. We need to keep this roll going. But overall, very excited, very pleased with tonight's victory.
Ryan, last call.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for that. Flying into town next week for the big Assembly Call meetup. I'm sure we'll email out all the details, time, location, all that stuff. But this is starting to shape up like a really nice season for Indiana. I think we all had questions after Maui, after Duke. But this team has really come together and is starting to play like a unit and far less like guys who just have specific defined roles and they're on the floor sort of fitting into that role and that's it. There's no connection. This team seems to play all together and the sky is the limit talent-wise for this team. I mean, they really do have the talent to do something special. So hopefully, we continue to see this steady growth. It has been a steady growth. It hasn't just been, last year I felt like at the beginning of the Big Ten season when Indiana kind of ran off some nice wins, I felt like it was a real spike out of nowhere. And then, it sort of folded in on itself. And I feel like this has been slow, steady growth backed by some really nice performances that have been consistent as opposed to just a really high and then followed, with some low lows in there. So we'll see what happens, but I mean it's time to if the Indiana can pull off these next two wins, it's time to start getting excited about this team.
Yeah, and frankly, I think it's time to start getting excited about this team right now. I know I tweeted midway through the second half, I love this team. And I really do, just seeing how much fun they have playing together, seeing the spirit that they're playing with, seeing how hard they're playing, even in a blowout tonight. Indiana never really seemed like it was cruising. They kept playing hard. They kept their foot on the gas. I mentioned the play, from Yogi earlier tonight where he sprinted and got that rebound, and it led to a three-pointer for Colin Hartman. Those are the types of little things, the extra effort, the attention to detail, the focus that we haven't seen as much the last couple years that we're really seeing this year, and it's making this team fun to watch. And hopefully the games in the second half of the season are fun to watch too. Surely Indiana will lose some of them, but I think we're seeing a team that will be competitive and that has a real fight about it, a real spirit about it, and that makes watching Indiana basketball so much more fun. Ryan mentioned we will be in town. We will be in Bloomington for the Minnesota game. We'll be there on Saturday. After the game, we're going to have a meetup at Yogi's, not Yogi Ferrell's house, but Yogi's the bar in Bloomington. So we hope that you all will join us. No need to RSVP if you don't want to, but if you do want to let me know, just email me, jared@assemblycall.com, so we can get a number of how many people are going to be there. But we'll be there. We'd love to meet you, shake hands, talk some Hoosier hoops in person. Hopefully we're talking about a 9-0 IU team at that point. And certainly if we are, Yogi Ferrell is going to have a lot to do with it. And there's only one way that you can end a show on a night when Yogi Ferrell breaks the all-time assist record, and that's to give a proud, happy tip of the cap to Yogi Ferrell. It's been an up and down career for Yogi. Obviously, he came in with the Oladipo and Zeller team and led him to a Big Ten title, despite turning it over on almost 25% of his possessions and sometimes seeming to struggle to find his place on that team. But as soon as he broke the record tonight, you saw a tweet from Victor Oladipo congratulating him, showing the respect that he has for Yogi as a player. And we've seen Yogi, work through a different big man every year, carrying different roles, different loads. And here he is now as a senior playing his best basketball now in Big Ten play as a senior. And it's wonderful to see. And it's not just that he's making shots. It's not just that he's getting assists. He's locked in on the defensive end. He's hustling. He's leading this team. And that's a big part of the reason why this team has experienced the turnaround that it has. I know that his mom, Doc Libby, is extremely proud of him. Certainly, we're very proud of him, too. It's great to see. I mentioned in the email that I sent out after the Minnesota game that a big part of the reason why we all watch Indiana basketball is for the wins, for the chance to compete for Big Ten titles, for the chance to hang banners. We love that part of it. But I hope also, and I think that most IU fans who are true diehards and who are here for every game, the kind of people that watch and listen to this show, are in it for a little bit more than that, are in it to watch guys who are walking the same path that we all did as IU students, coming in as immature, inexperienced freshmen, but growing and developing and maturing and improving. And that's what we're seeing from Yogi. And, he really seems now, as he goes through his senior season, to be fulfilling the potential that we all thought he had when he came from Park Tudor. And we'll see what it leads to. We know that Yogi's ultimate legacy will be determined by how many wins Indiana gets and what they win. Do they win a Big Ten title? Do they make a deep run in March? Yogi will always be the all-time assist leader until someone breaks it. But certainly when he leaves, he'll be the all-time assist leader. But what will the rest of that legacy be? We will see. But with each game that I see this team play locked in on defense and playing together, it makes me more and more excited about what they could do. And so my final thought, I tweeted this link out earlier today, but I'll tweet it again and pin it to the top of my Twitter page at Assembly Call. We will include it in our link roundup, which you'll be able to find tomorrow morning at assemblycall.com. But Sam Bashuzin, an Indiana student, wrote a great article about Yogi, and there was a great I Am a Hoosier video that they did about Yogi, kind of chronicling his journey. And it was fantastic. And so I'll tweet that. We'll put it in our link roundup. But definitely make sure that you check that out because it really is. It's a wonderful retrospective on what Yogi has done already as a Hoosier. And obviously over these next 12 games of Big Ten play, Big Ten tournament, and NCAA tournament, we will see what else Yogi can do. But so far, so good. He's been terrific. The team was terrific tonight, and it resulted in a 103-69 Indiana victory, and the Hoosiers sit at 6-0, ready for Northwestern on Saturday. And we will talk to you at halftime of that game, and we will talk to you after that game. And for everybody who's on the email list, we will talk to you tomorrow morning in your inbox. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching, and we will talk to you on Saturday on another episode of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. Take care, everybody.